Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And this time, we're going to be tackling a process you may not have heard of before, but stick with us because it's a good one. It's called expense review.
And it really is a fascinating process.
Yeah, so we're going to explore expense review today and why it's so important for businesses. And honestly, I think for anybody who wants to have a really strong grasp on their finances, but we're going to focus on the business side of things today.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at some material from, let's see, we've got some articles here from the Journal of Accountancy.
You've got a couple of case studies as well.
Yes, exactly. A couple of case studies that highlight just how impactful this process can be.
And actually, there's a really insightful white paper from a leading financial consulting firm.
Oh, right. I remember that one. Yeah, he had some really practical tips and advice.
It did.
Yeah, so we're going to try to synthesize all of this information for you and really give you a clear picture of what expense review is all about, why it matters, and how to actually implement it effectively.
Exactly. And we're going to uncover some hidden financial risks you might not even be aware of.
Yeah, and we're also going to learn how this seemingly mundane process can actually empower better decision-making.
It really can.
So if you're ready to unlock the secrets of expense review, then buckle up and let's dive in.
I love that. All right, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is expense review?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because from the sources I've read, it seems like it's all about understanding where your money's going, like really understanding.
Yes, it's like having a financial microscope allowing you to zoom in and see exactly where every dollar is going.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so from your research, what would you say is the core objective of this expense review process?
Well, the main thing is making sure that every single expense a business has is categorized accurately under the right cost center.
Okay, so it's not enough to just know money went out the door. You have to know exactly where it went and what it was spent on.
Right. You need that meticulous classification process to have really reliable financial reporting.
That makes sense. So what happens if a business doesn't have this kind of granular, detailed picture of their finances?
Oh, it can be a big problem. It's like trying to put together a really complicated piece of furniture without the instructions.
Ooh, I've been there.
You might get there eventually, but it's going to be a lot harder, and you're probably going to make some mistakes along the way.
Yeah, and in the world of business, those mistakes can cost you.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about more than just balancing the books here. We're talking about having the insights to make informed decisions about where to allocate resources, where to cut back, and where to invest for growth.
Exactly. It's about having that financial clarity to make strategic decisions.
Okay, so how often do we need to do this expense review thing to make sure we're staying on top of our finances?
Well, the sources I reviewed all emphasize that monthly reviews are key.
Monthly? So it's not just an annual thing?
Right, exactly. It's got to be a regular check-in to make sure your financial picture is up to date and accurately reflects what's happening in your business.
So it's like taking your financial pulse regularly, making sure everything's flowing as it should be.
Precisely, think of it as preventative maintenance for your financial health.
Yeah, you wouldn't wait for your car to completely break down before taking it to the mechanic, would you?
Hopefully not.
So we've established this needs to happen regularly, but can we talk about those cost centers a bit more? What are they exactly, and why is assigning expenses to them so crucial?
So cost centers are basically the building blocks of your financial reporting structure. Think of them as categories that represent different departments, projects, or teams within your organization.
Okay, so it's kind of like creating a detailed map of your company's financial ecosystem so you can see exactly where the money's going, which areas are thriving, and which might need more attention.
Exactly, and that level of detail helps you answer those critical questions. Are your marketing efforts actually generating a return on investment? Are certain departments overspending on supplies? Things like that.
Those are definitely questions every business leader would want to be able to answer. For sure. But let's face it, we all make mistakes. So what happens when errors pop up during this expense review process?
Well, that's where verification comes in. You don't just categorize expenses. You have to make sure the amounts are accurate, matching those accounting records with the actual transactions, making sure every dollar is accounted for.
That's like double-checking your work. But in this case, it's making sure your financial foundation is solid.
Exactly.
Okay, but what are some of the real-world consequences of overlooking seemingly small discrepancies? Can those really have a big impact?
Oh, absolutely. Even minor errors can snowball into something much bigger if they aren't caught early on. Imagine a scenario where marketing expenses are consistently misclassified. Maybe they're being attributed to the wrong department,
Oh, I see.
Over time, that seemingly small error can distort your understanding of your marketing ROI and potentially influence decisions about future campaigns.
Wow. So it's really about building that culture of accuracy and accountability within the company.
It's about creating a system that helps you catch those errors quickly and make the necessary adjustments to keep your financial picture clear and reliable.
Okay. I'm starting to see why this meticulous approach is so essential. But I think we need to take a break here. And when we come back, we'll delve into the risks a company might face if they don't prioritize this process.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've been talking about how crucial this whole expense review process is for companies to really have a clear understanding of their finances. But let's flip the script for a minute. What happens when businesses don't make this a priority?
Right. Well, that's where things can get a little dicey. It's like driving a car without checking the gauges. Everything might seem fine on the surface, but there could be problems brewing under the hood.
Okay, so give me for instance, what's like a specific risk a company might run into if they're not diligently reviewing their expenses?
Well, one of the most immediate risks is the potential for cost overruns. Without a clear picture of where their money's going, companies can easily overspend.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It could be anything from recurring subscriptions they don't need anymore to duplicate payments slipping through the cracks.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that.
Even small, unnoticed expenses can really add up over time and have a big impact on the bottom line.
It's like a slow leak that could eventually drain the company's resources.
Exactly. And this lack of financial control can make it harder to make those strategic decisions about the future.
Right, because if you don't know where your money's going, how can you plan for where you want it to go?
Precisely. It's like trying to navigate a maze blindfolded. You might stumble on the exit eventually, but it's going to be a lot harder, and you're much more likely to hit some dead ends along the way.
So expense review isn't just about keeping track of past spending. It's about having those insights to make informed decisions about the future.
Absolutely. And speaking of informed decisions, let's talk about how neglecting expense review can really mess things up when it comes to financial reporting.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, remember, expense review makes sure every dollar is accounted for and categorized correctly, right? But if this process is neglected, those financial reports that companies generate, they could be full of errors.
And I'm guessing investors and lenders aren't going to be too happy about that.
You got it inaccurate. Financial reports can be a huge red flag. They raise doubts about the company's financial stability and can make it much harder to secure funding or attract investors.
So it's not just an internal issue. It can really affect the company's ability to operate and grow.
Exactly. And let's not forget about audits.
Oh, yeah. Those could be
For companies that haven't been diligent with their expense reviews, an audit can turn into a logistical nightmare.
because auditors are going to want to see those perfectly organized financial records, right?
Precisely. If a company's documentation is a mess, it's going to raise all sorts of questions and could even trigger a deeper investigation.
And I bet that can be a very costly and time-consuming process.
It can be a huge disruption, and it can also damage the company's reputation.
Yeah, no one wants.
A smooth audit, on the other hand, shows financial transparency and accountability, which can be a big plus when it comes to building trust with stakeholders.
So keeping those expense records squeaky clean is just good business sense.
It really is.
But beyond the financial risks, what about the impact on a company's internal operations? Can neglecting expense review actually affect how teams work together?
Absolutely. When there's a lack of clarity around spending and budgets, it can create a lot of friction within a company. Departments might start competing for resources, or there might be a lack of accountability for how those funds are being used.
So it's not just about the numbers. It can actually lead to conflict and inefficiency.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the impact on employee morale. If teams are constantly battling budget constraints or feel like their financial needs aren't being met, it can create a lot of frustration and negativity.
Right. It's like a domino effect. Financial mismanagement in one area can impact communication, collaboration, and ultimately the company's overall success.
Precisely. And that's why prioritizing expense review is so important. It's not just about avoiding risks. It's about creating a foundation for financial health, operational efficiency, and a positive collaborative work environment.
So we've talked about some of the downsides of neglecting expense review, but what about the flip side? What are some of the tangible benefits companies can experience when they make this process a priority?
That's where things get exciting, because when expense review is embraced and done well, it becomes a powerful tool for growth and optimization. But I think we've covered a lot of ground. For now, why don't we take a break and come back to explore the positive side of expense review?
Okay, so we spent a good chunk of time talking about what could go wrong if you don't do expense review. But let's talk about the good stuff. What are some of the upsides for companies that actually do this process right?
Well, when expense review is done right, it can really become a powerful tool. It helps with financial optimization and growth. It's like a compass that points you toward better decisions and a healthier bottom line.
So it's not just about putting out fires, it's about finding opportunities.
Exactly.
Can you give me some examples of how companies actually benefit from prioritizing expense review?
Sure. One of the biggest benefits is that it really helps with budget forecasting. By analyzing how you spent money in the past, you can make more accurate and realistic budgets for the future.
So you're saying it's like having a crystal ball for your finances?
Kind of. You can anticipate needs and make decisions proactively.
I like it. What else?
Expense review can also help you figure out the best pricing strategies.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, by understanding the real cost of providing your products or services, you can set prices that make sure you're making a profit while still being competitive.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in industries where margins are already pretty tight.
Exactly. And sometimes expense review can even help you find hidden revenue streams or new opportunities for innovation.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, by digging into that expense data, you might find areas where you can make money from things you already have or come up with new products or services that people actually need.
So you're saying a financial audit can turn into a brainstorming session.
Sometimes, yeah, it's all about looking at the numbers from different angles.
I like that a lot. But let's talk about the folks who aren't in the finance department. How can understanding expense review help them?
That's a good question. Even if you're not a finance person, understanding these principles can make you a better employee.
How so?
Well, it helps you see how your decisions affect the company's financial health. Like when you're filling out expense reports or managing a team budget or even just making purchasing decisions.
So it's about thinking bigger than just your own tasks and understanding how you fit into the bigger financial picture.
Right. And when everyone in the company has that kind of awareness, it creates a culture of responsibility, which is good for everyone.
It sounds like expense review is really about more than just numbers. It's about empowering businesses to make better choices, use their resources wisely, and reach their goals.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Well, I think this deep dive into expense review has been really eye-opening. We've covered a lot of ground and learned a lot.
Me too. And I hope our listeners now have a better grasp of this important part of managing finances.
Absolutely. It's clear that expense review is crucial for any business that wants to succeed and thrive. So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and engaging.
And remember, the principles we've talked about today apply whether you're running a big company or just managing your personal finances.
That's a great point. So until next time, keep those expenses in check and those financial goals in sight.